So I've just come back from a trip to Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and while I had a great time, these are the 10 things I would replace in Blackpool Pleasure Beach if I were a billionaire, which I definitely am not. And that's not to say that I didn't have a good time when I was there. I really did. It was great. We went on Enzo twice because it was only £5. Had a great time, but definitely there's things that I would change. So, first of all, number one is I would change the walk from the train station to the actual pleasure beach. Now, at the moment, you leave the station and everything looks really grim and kind of grey and depressing, even on a nice sunny day. Yes, you can see the big ones turn around, but before you reach that, you have to then play chicken with this confusing road layout. There's these grey pebble dashed hotels and empty buildings. So with my billionaire money, I changed this road layout, and I changed it so that pedestrians coming from the train station can easily see how to cross the road, rather than as it currently stands, coming out of the train station, going and then just running across the road. I would also, because there's traffic coming from 3 or 4 separate directions and it's confusing, and I appreciate it's by the sea and the weather can be very unkind, but I'd also plant some trees around there, and that way when people arrive they'll see some trees, which I think is nice. Secondly, what I would then do is take this building, which was once a hotel, and you can see it from the picture here, and it's currently derelict, and this I would actually convert into flats. So I'd convert it into studios and 1, maybe 2 bedrooms, and I would specifically design these so that they could be good home working spaces. So their living space would have a flexible layout so that you can then switch it back to a living space at the end of the day. Things like desks that fold in and like self-contained areas that you can just shut away and move. So at the end of the day, you then flip it back into your living space. And I would actually market these at people who have jobs in Manchester, Preston, I think Lancaster, other places like that that are served by that line. And these people are who are lucky enough, and I speak as someone who is not lucky enough to have jobs where they can work from home at least part of the time. And so I would very strongly aim at people like this who would like to stop flat sharing, maybe get a foot in the property ladder. Remember the property ladder? Showing my age there. And sort of market it and say, look, for the same amount or less as you're spending on rent for a shared house in Manchester, you could live by the seafront in Blackpool in this lovely flat. And yes, you're going to have to pay for train tickets maybe a couple of times a week, but it still works out cheaper. And currently, of course, this whole area is a bit dead, particularly in the off season, but I'm going to deal with that later on. In the meantime, of course, there is a tram, a very, very nice purple tram that goes all the way down the seafront and connects the different areas of the seafront together. So it's boring in February, but you can get the tram into the centre of Blackpool, so it's not like you're isolated in the middle of nowhere. So, and you're probably thinking, oh, this is total pie in the sky. Nobody would do this. This place is just desolate and miserable. What are you even talking about? But consider a seaside town considerably nearer to me, Brighton, which when I moved to London, it was considered to be a tatty, faded seaside resort, full of dodgy people, full of druggies, unhoused people. But since that time, London commuters have all moved in. They saw the cheaper house prices, and what's happened is they've moved in and they have transformed, sort of, Brighton into a bohemian seaside resort, and now it has extremely valuable properties. In some areas the house prices are higher than London. And what's interesting is that the dodgy sorts, people with drug abuse problems, whatever, they are definitely still around. And if you go to Brighton, there they are. They haven't gone away. But Brighton also now has a more thriving community and is alive all year round. And most importantly, Brighton may have the weather, but it doesn't have the beach. Like, Brighton has a miserable gravelly beach, and even more importantly, Brighton has 2 roller coasters, and they are both absolutely terrible. But and also, if you think that people aren't going to go for a 1.5 hour, 2 hour commute from Blackpool to Manchester, and you think, oh, that's unreasonable, no one's going to do that. There are a lot of people who work in the city, and I know quite a lot of people who travel that distance every day. Like, I know people who come in from Southend. I knew someone who came in from Grantham, of all places. So these long commutes are not unprecedented, and particularly if people are only doing it once or twice a week, it's a pretty easy sell, in my opinion. So that's my first and second plan. But while I'm also developing this area around the station and encouraging people to live nearby all year round, so I'm transforming some of these empty hotels into permanent flats, and they are going to be decent quality flats. You know, they're going to be nice enough. I think if people have families, they may want to move away, but that's always going to happen. So I'm busy improving that area of Blackpool, and now I want to invest my £1 billion into turning what is currently a shabby looking seafront as you walk up the seafront to the pleasure beach. Now you can see it's looking a bit miserable. It looks worse now that the street view is from a couple of years ago. And now I do know the Thompsons are planning to do something with all this blank frontage, but let's face it, I'm just daydreaming anyway, so that doesn't really matter. I think they're planning to put more accommodation in, but I would do the same. Now, I would definitely add in more budget accommodation for visitors to Pleasure Beach, so not just hotel rooms but also apartments that families can rent for a week or more, and then they can use these apartments as a base to explore the area more widely, as well as spending more time at the resort. In terms of the current development, I wonder if the current local council are being a bit difficult about planning permission, or maybe it's a budget issue. And again, the seafront is an unforgiving location. But what I do here with my billion is renovate the area and have spots, places where people can set up shops, cafes, other small businesses, and these would not just cater to tourists, because as you can see from the street view, there's a fish and chip shop, there's a couple of small souvenir shops, there is one tiny shop that sells things like snacks and cold drinks and souvenirs, and I'm surprised there isn't more just here, to be honest. Maybe there is a bit more further up the road, but as you come into Pleasure Beach, there really isn't much. So if you think, oh, I want to get a drink before I go in, there's really not much. The guy who runs the little shop he's very nice though. But these shops that I'm planning to build wouldn't cater just for tourists, so we're not just selling rock and stuff for the beach. We are also going to be serving these new, what I'm going to call city people that I've moved in around the corner, and they're knocking around for the bulk of the week as they're working from home. So they will want shops, they might want some cafes, and they'll want at least a Tesco Metro, something like that, within walking distance. And unlike the tourists, again, these people are here all year round, and with any luck, I'll have attracted people with more disposable income than the average in Blackpool, making them a good market. And again, before you say, oh, this is Debbie Sears' pie in the sky, I would like to show you some street view images of where I grew up in Horsforth in Leeds. And prior to a new train station being put in, I think it's called Quarry something, anyway. So prior to the new train station being put in Horsforth, you can see that the main street called New Roadside was a bit drab, it was a bit grim, there wasn't really much going on, and from memory, people would set up businesses and they just wouldn't last very long. There just wasn't that much passing trade. But as you can see from more recent street view images, in that area we now have a lot more cafes, we've got some more shops, we've got various other small businesses that are like there's this really trendy bakery that's really nice, and these new businesses are more stable, and they are obviously serving the individuals who've moved to Horsforth because they are living there, they're commuting into Leeds some days a week, maybe full time. But what we have now in Horsforth is a pool of somewhat younger people who are working, but they also want to go and have a coffee with their friends in the middle of the day, go out for lunch, and that's just really boosted this area of Horsforth. So yeah, it's perfectly possible. And the advantage with Blackpool is the obviously the train station is already there. So not to mention, of course, I forgot to mention that we've got these new locals knocking around and a bit more money sloshing around in the economy throughout the year. So it's no longer just seasonal and entirely dependent on the summer season and the illuminations to bring in income. So we've got higher employment rates around Blackpool, and that in itself is going to smart up the seafront. And not to mention, of course, that I've brought in a bunch of people who hopefully are being paid a bit more, and they're going to be paying council tax because they are there all year round, unlike the tourists who are only there for maybe a week. So fourthly, I've now improved the local economy around Blackpool Pleasure Beach, which you're very welcome. Now it's got some cafes, it's got shops, it's got a few small offices, some small businesses, and people there all year round, and that's great. And a lot of these people are going to be delighted, maybe not, that they live next to Blackpool Pleasure Beach. So let's improve Pleasure Beach itself. Now, one thing amongst the others that you notice as you walk in is that two of the entrances are rusty, sad and closed, and this is a shame. So with my billion, I would smarten up all of the entrances to Pleasure Beach, and I'm not sure if I'd reopen the other ones, but I'd certainly beautify them in some way. I want to make the entrance to Pleasure Beach, and as you can see, I've got this is an archive footage. This is my grandfather's own footage of the entrance to Pleasure Beach in about 1953. And it's always looked like this. It just you go around a corner and, oh, there's an amusement park here. But what I'd like is the entrance to be more like the entrance into other theme parks, where you're welcomed by characters, cast members who kind of bring you in and orient you around the atmosphere and theming of the park. So, for example, when you enter Chessington, you're greeted with a big grass lion, you're greeted with music, people waving, saying hello, big sign, welcome to Chessington World of Adventures. And Blackpool, you are not. You're greeted with some rusty gates and the hot ice show, which promises boobs, but as far as I know, doesn't actually have any boobs in it. But so with my billions, we're going to have characters, we're going to have more plants, music, and a nice big sign. So fifthly, now I've improved the exterior of the Pleasure Beach. I've improved the economy of the local area. So now we've made sure we've got enough staff to run the place. We have more visitors coming in because they're not being put off, and they find this area of Blackpool to be a much more attractive place to stay. So my next step is to improve the park itself. Finally, after 5 things, I'm going to ignore the fact that several of the rides are listed, and so in reality it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to make any of these changes. And I do understand that, let's face it, I don't have £1 billion. So top of my list is to improve these wooden roller coasters. Now, they are all vintage. I would never dream of removing these. Again, I have footage of Big Dipper from 1953 that my grandfather shot. So especially for me, knowing that these rides are rides that my mother rode on when she was a kid, emotionally that means a lot to me. I wouldn't want to get rid of them. So they are special, they're unique. Big Dipper is now the oldest roller coaster in the UK operating. But what I would do is I would replace the trains on all of them, fancy new trains, and I would make sure that they could all run with at least 2 trains to improve capacity, because currently we have huge queues, especially for Big Dipper and for Nickelodeon Streak. I wonder what my cat is doing. Dread to think. And it's not a good look for any park, for people's experience, to mostly involve waiting in queues for things. Now, I would also, I know a lot of people have talked about this, I would take Grand National, which is called a dueling roller coaster, which means that there are 2 trains that run on the track at the same time. They kind of race each other. And yes, I would make a hybrid coaster out of this, which means you replace the wooden track with steel track, and you can wind a more exciting layout through the old structure. Now, there's a company called RMC, which I know has a lot of detractors. I think that's fair. Apparently they don't have a great reputation for being reliable or having great capacity, but they do this a lot. They take an old roller coaster and they insert steel track and a new layout in the old structure. Now, yes, okay, they don't have great capacity, these RMC coasters, but Blackpool Pleasure Beach, their wooden coasters right now also don't have great capacity, and neither are they reliable. So even if it's only a marginal improvement, it will still be an improvement, in my opinion. I think doing this would also be very exciting for people who maybe went to Pleasure Beach as children. In particular, people like my mother, and obviously here you go again, there's some footage of her at Pleasure Beach as a child, and she's no longer around. And I think it would be fascinating for somebody like that, if she was still around, to take her back to Pleasure Beach, and then she can say, oh, I remember this coaster, but I don't remember it looking like this. And so I feel this kind of extensive refurbishment and reimagining would encourage a lot of older people to go back and maybe bring their kids, their grandchildren, and say, oh wow, this is what it used to be like, and now look at it. And I remember this coaster, but I don't remember this. And what is a death roll again? I don't know. Because Pleasure Beach, I feel, suffers from people having gone when they were kids and a perception that not much has changed, and I don't think they're quite wrong there. So creating something new based on what was already there gives the Pleasure Beach a chance to market itself to these people and say, oh, hey, well, you remember this ride? Well, look what we've done. It's so different now. Your kids will love it. And when these people walk from the train station to Pleasure Beach, they will also say, wow, this looks so much nicer than it used to. I feel safe walking down the street at night because there's lots of people around. There are shops, there are small businesses, and this is just a fun place to be and to stay. And I'd also pop in a museum in the park as well, just showing the park over the years. Now, 6, I obviously will take out Infusion, because of course there's nothing special or unique about Infusion. It's a standard model of roller coaster that you can find all over the world, and is famously very uncomfortable. I would approach the manufacturer of Infusion, who's a company called Vekoma, and I would ask them if they could, in the same space, build one of their newer, comfortable looping roller coasters. So to keep the water underneath, which is currently about this deep and rank, because they haven't filled up the pond for about 2 years, and they used to have fountains and stuff that would spray you. So I'd bring all that back in, because that's what makes the coaster unique and interesting. But people could ride this new version of Infusion without whacking their ears, because the collar goes like this, and then your head goes like this, and you bang your ears on it. And you bang your ears, you shake your feelings loose. When I was on it, it wasn't too bad, but I had a bit of a cold, and basically the first loop, a huge gob of snot came out of my nose. And I don't think that's relevant to the quality of the ride or anything, but it was quite funny. So I'm sorry to the next person to sit on that seat after me. I did try and do my best, but yeah, I'm sorry. 7. Now, I wouldn't change much about the big one. Now, the big one, I would start with tarting up the loading station, so it doesn't feel like you're waiting outside a rave in the 1990s. But to be honest, beyond a decent set of new tracks, some new trains, being able to run 3 trains at a time, I think there isn't really much else to change. Well, I've just said I wouldn't change anything, but I've just changed everything. But ultimately the bones of the ride remain the same. It remains a wonderful ride, kind of, and it dominates the skyline for miles around. You can see it from so far away. You can actually see it from Pleasure Beach Station, and it is iconic. And honestly, beyond my complete retracking and replacing of the trains and changing the loading station and changing how many trains we can run on the track, no, I wouldn't change anything about big one. Now, 8, I probably also wouldn't change Revolution too much. I would certainly give it a good coat of paint. And the other thing I would change, apart from replacing the skanky trains, is to make sure that people who cannot climb the many, many flights of stairs up and down up. When we went, I'd done in my Achilles, which was fine going up, but going down was no bueno. That took quite a while. So I would really like it if more people were able to access this ride. And yeah, I would work out a way of putting in some lifts to make sure that anyone who wants to ride the Revolution is able to do so. Now, it is an old ride. It's like older than me, nearly as old as me. And I'm not sure how much longer it's got. Same. So in the future, I would definitely be considering what I would put in its place. Now, I think something that would fit in what is quite a weird footprint is maybe something like a gyro swing. Oh no, hang on, they've already got one of those. It will have either opened by the time this goes out or is just about to go live. Number nine. I would squeeze in a new family launch coaster from Intamin, probably in the spot where Grand Prix used to be. Now it's currently just like grass and a fountain. Now there's not that many rides for younger kids and parents who might not be up for the big one but want to get their money's worth, and they're maybe too old for Nickelodeon land, but they're just not tall enough to get on some of these rides. Now newer coasters tend to have a lower height requirement because the technology for restraints and stuff has improved a lot, but there's still quite a big gap between Nickelodeon Streak and Icon, and I feel like a nice fun multi-launch coaster from Intamin that everyone can ride and everyone can enjoy together, because I think for some adults that's going to be their limit. They won't want to do anything else, but I feel currently they're just not well served, and Pleasure Beach hasn't had a new coaster since Icon in 2018. So I feel it's time to get that in. Now, I don't know how much money I've got left right now, but it's imaginary money, so that's okay. So the final thing is just a quick one, 10. It doesn't mean I've run out of ideas, it just means I've front loaded all my ideas. I put in some more family flat rides and dot them around the place, because there have been a few that have gone. For example, the bumper cars went, that funny Skyfly thing is SBNO, and I think that kind of thing is just important to absorb some of the capacity. Basically what you find in parks like Europa Park, Plopsaland, Efteling, is they never get hour-long queues for anything, at least not normally, because the park has so many attractions. Just in terms of numbers alone, you can have a park that's absolutely full to capacity. There's no more people are allowed in, but because there is something for everybody to do, people aren't thinking, oh well, I have to go and wait in line for the Smiler, because there's nothing else to do in the park. I've done everything else. There's like 10 attractions and I've done them all. And I feel that particularly because the Thompson family are effectively a showman family, like the Mack family who run, it is 4 o'clock, like the Mack family who run Europa Park, they're very much focused on making sure that everyone's having a good time. They're not just, I mean, obviously they're running it for a profit, but they're not a big chain, is what I'm getting at. And the feeling that your experience at the park is just consists of waiting in long lines for everything is not a very good marketing thing for people. And indeed, a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to go to Chessington, I don't want to go to Legoland, because last time I went I waited in a queue. And it's all very well saying, oh well, you can use this strategy, you know, you go to the back of the park, you work yourself work forward, you use single rider, all these different tips that I know about but a lot of people don't. And you feel like you shouldn't have to sit through a military style PowerPoint presentation before you go to a theme park in order to avoid long queues. What you need is for the park to have more things for people to do. So shows, little family flat rides, anything really, just to make sure that there's other stuff for people to do that doesn't involve queuing for the big roller coasters. And that is what I would add in. Things like another dark ride would be fantastic. And yep, some more shows. And also 11th maybe is the chip shop by the fountains is flipping amazing. It is the best fish and chips I've had that side of the Pennines, and when we went it was shut and I was very disappointed. So I would also make sure that that is open for next time I go. And so those are the 10 things I would replace in Blackpool. Now you do get a prize if you pop into the comments the point at which I started talking about sort of urbanism and making things less car forward and more pedestrian friendly. Maybe you picked that up, but yeah, if you spotted that, do let me know. I think I was very subtle about it, and probably most people didn't see. So that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do the stuff, you know, you can give me a like, you can give me a comment, and you can subscribe if you want to. Hi Moss, and hello to Evie and to Jessica, obviously all icons, and happy to have you here. And thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.